In this video, I'm going to use ChatGPT as a personal to-do list. Create some commands to manage and maintain more than one list, and I'm going to be able to add, remove, and mark items as complete. This video won't just show you how to do a to-do list in ChatGPT, but also show you how you can create commands to have much more control over what you do with ChatGPT. Earlier this year, when I was learning about prompt engineering, I was exploring different ideas of controlling ChatGPT. And one of the ideas that I was looking into was, could I control it like I might control an application? And at the time, I wrote this little prompt around to-do lists. And I had concepts like a list create, and I would give the name of the list that I would like to have to-dos on. And then I'd have something like a list add, and there'd be the name of the list that the item would go onto, and then whatever the item would be, and there'd be a list remove, and could we see the various to-do items within different lists. Now I thought I'd re-explore this idea now that we have access to custom instructions, which give us a fair bit more control over the ideas of what happens every time a prompt comes in, and what happens every time a response goes out from ChatGPT. While this video is specifically about a to-do list, what you will find is that you'll be able to reuse these concepts to make ChatGPT more consistent and easier to use through commands that you can create yourself. To get started, head over to ChatGPT. I'm in the GPT-4 model at the moment. Click on the three little dots here and we have an area called custom instructions. And from here we can put in some information to handle a request and to handle how ChatGPT will respond. As we build out the to-do list manager, which will be a custom GPT instruction, we're going to work through this infographic here and develop the AI role, the overview and the guidelines on how it should work, what commands it should work with, and when a command comes in, how should it respond. You can put any text you like into a custom GPT instruction request or response. There is a limit of 1500 characters for each field. But apart from that, put in whatever you like. But what we're going to do is look at a little programming language that I've developed here, which will allow us to think in terms of sections, what's important. And just to show you how it works, I'll just add in some text. I'll just say hello world and I'll hit save on this. And what we should see is that the AI role is now updated with hello world. If I wanted a command, I might do a line break followed by a command called help, and that command, if you used it, would show help. Now all this information will be made available later on to both the request and the response buttons down here, and that will just copy the text into my clipboard so I can use it within ChatGPT. A common concept when writing prompts is defining the role that ChatGPT is meant to take. And in this case, what we'll do is we'll just say that you are a to-do app. What I'd like to do now is give an overview of what this bot is meant to do. And I think we can start off with, you will maintain my to-do lists. You will keep different lists, so more than one list is going to be maintained, and I want to be able to add, view and mark as complete various to-do items. Now we'll just hit save. We should see that update. Now I'd like to test this out, but before we do, let's add one more concept, and that's the idea of a command. And we'll just keep it very simple. So I'll type in command and we'll call it help. So essentially I would like to be able to type the word help and understand what this bot is going to do. So if we fill it in, and I'll just paste in this message, show the role, list the commands, and an overview of how you work. Now I don't get my grammar exactly right. I just get the bare minimum of information in because I've only got 1500 characters in which to write this information. Now I would like to test this custom instruction, but before I do, I'm going to head over to ChatGPT and we'll just see what happens if we give it a command such as help. Now my expectation is that we'll get some sort of a generic message from ChatGPT. We do, of course, please provide more information. So we'll head back over to our instruction that we've created. We're going to call it to-do app. We've got a list of concept set, we want it in the overview, and we've got one command called help. So when I type in help next time, we should get better information. We've also said show a list of commands, show the role, give an overview of how you're planning to work for us, and we can just go down and click on this request button. And now when we head over to ChatGPT, I can just paste, and we've got this information here. One of the things to notice is that some of the labels, especially the one for the AI role, are not in this list of information, and this will become relevant in a moment. Now, what I won't do is do it as a regular prompt. Now you do not need to use custom instructions. You can take this and just use it as a regular prompt. The problem with doing it this way is that if this conversation goes for a long period of time, it will forget all your commands. So instead what we do is we head over to this area, click on the three little dots, go to custom instructions, and we paste it in here. And this is where I said it was relevant to the amount of information you put into the text, is that we've only got 1500 characters that we can put in here. The same with how it should respond, only 1500 characters. So some of the things you'll notice, like with the command, overview of how you work. Grammatically, you might write that a little bit more with more information, but it's not needed for the custom instructions. So I keep it as simple as possible. And now when we hit save and we do a new chat, we can just type in help again, and hopefully we're going to get a detailed look at what this can do. It's already said that it's designed to maintain our to-do lists. Its role, I'll maintain different lists for you. I will add, view, mark items. Now we only defined one command, and it looks like it's listed a bunch of commands. What we'll do over time is we will define our own commands, and we may even use the information that's on this list. But the problem with this is that because we haven't defined it, again, if any conversation gets long, it might just start doing random stuff on us. We really want to be quite specific in the commands we give, and we may also want to name them differently. We might want to support an alias. Do you really want to type complete when maybe C colon might be enough information? Let's test it out though, because since it has come up with commands, it might actually work. So I'm just going to type add, and I reckon we can go with groceries, and I think I want an apple. We'll see what happens with this. Says I've added an apple to your groceries list. I think in these examples I'll go between food and dance. I do dancing, I do salsa, bachata, stuff like that. So I think we'll create another list and we'll call it dance, and we'll just say I need to do some salsa tonight. Hopefully now we have two to-do items. Hopefully we've also got two lists. So I'm not sure whether this is going to work the way it's done. We will try the show lists command next. So if we type in show lists colon, press enter, and we definitely got two lists. So this is a good thing. I decided to explore the command structure the way ChatGPT has come up with it, and I'll just go over a couple of things that show up. So as we move down, I decided to add orange. Now you might notice beforehand it said, would you like to manage these lists further? Now I don't really want it asking me questions along the way. I just want it executing tasks based on commands. So I said add orange. I would hope that it would go onto the groceries list. Now it has picked up that it should go onto the grocery list, but it's asking, would you like it to be added? And the same thing happened when I added bachata to the dance list. It asked a similar sort of question. What that meant is that when I did the show list, it only came up with the first two items. It didn't add the new items to the new list. So what I think we can do is improve the instructions, improve the commands ourselves so that it does exactly what we need it to do. We're back over at our to-do list manager instruction, and I would like to add three commands. One to set the current list that we're working with, one to add items to a list, and one to mark items as being done. So for the set, we'll work with an idea that there's a command called set, that it would take a name, so the name of the list that you would like to put the focus on, and then it just says set the current list, create a new list if it doesn't exist. So you should be able to use this when there aren't any to-do lists of that name. Now, if we move on, we've got add. It takes the list name as the first parameter. Notice there's a little question mark there. I'll talk about that in a moment. And then the item you would like to add to the list. And we'll add one other command called done. So it's got the idea that you can set a current list, you can add an item to an existing list, and you can mark an item on a list as already done. So we'll just hit save on that. It should update the visualization. We've got that. The way I'm visualizing it, now this doesn't come through to the GPT instruction. This is just for me to understand the communication of what I'm trying to do. But the things that are light brown, the name, the item, the day, they're parameters. So you should be able to change them to whatever value you like. We should be able to add salsa on Thursday, something like that. You might notice that with the add and the done command that I've got this little question mark in here. What I want ChatGPT to know is that this is an optional parameter. I may provide it, I may not. But it won't just guess this auto-magically. We need to tell it. So what we'll do is we'll add in a section that says any parameter with a question mark is optional. So just like an instruction to a human, you can give these instructions to the bot and hopefully it will understand it. Let's quickly add 4 new commands. I basically want to be able to see what to-do lists are available. So we'll have something like show lists. I want to be able to see what items need to be done on a to-do list. We'll call that command to do. And any items that are on the list, they should get added to the bottom of the list, but we might want to move them up or down on the list. So the commands we'll add is we'll have list, which will have show all to-do lists. Now notice here I've also got this concept called shortcut. And ideally, I don't necessarily want to type list colon and then whatever we're doing. Maybe L colon would be good enough. It might be really nice to have shortcuts or aliases for commands. Now I haven't got that implemented here yet, but this is an idea that you can move forward and I'll show you how you can implement that in a moment. The next one is to do. This will give us a list of items that we need to do on a particular list. Then we've got the up command and the down command. And the idea is that it will take a list item either up or down. And that ideally you should be able to give the item by name, or if it's a long name, you don't want to type that in. Hopefully they're numbered and you can just say move item 3 up. Now at the moment, none of these items are numbered. We haven't put that in, so we will need to deal with that. And that's something that'll come up when we get down to the guidelines. This is just a little bit of extra context that we want to give to ChatGPT when it's processing a command or anything else within the system. Now, the last command that would make sense in a to-do list concept is the idea of having a clear. We should be able to clear the items on a to-do list. Now, there's also a more generic sort of command that I like to add into all my custom GPT instructions, and that I'm going to call status. And the idea of status is more to give a short synopsis of what's going on. In this case, we just want to know what the current list name is, because that was the focus list. We also want to show the command names. Now, I don't want it to be a detailed list of commands. I just want a little prompt to remember, add or list or to do. So I have this command called status. It will give us information about these commands, but we are going to give it a little bit of extra information either in the guidelines or in the response so that it's not too verbose. Now we've completed our list of commands, but I think the last bit, just to give a little bit of extra help, is to let ChatGPT know how these commands will be called. So we'll just put in a little bit of text before them all called command access is by /command or command colon. I usually use the command colon. We'll hit save on that. It should update the visualization. I think it's time to see how all this information gets built and we can paste it directly into ChatGPT. I think also if we look at the add command and the done command, They might be useful to have shortcuts as well. That's something you'll do all the time. I'd like to say A colon and then whatever I want to add, or D colon and have that item marked as done. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in these two shortcuts, one called A, one called D, and I'll show you what happens with the way this gets written in a moment. So let's hit save. We'll pop over to this area called request and click on it to get a copy, and move over to ChatGPT where we can go to our custom instructions, and that's the old one that we had all the way up to the help command, and we'll just remove that information and paste in the new information. And a couple of things to notice is that when I give it a command, help or set or whatever it renders it as text in uppercase. Now, ChatGPT doesn't really need this, but it does help me to see where the commands are. One of the other things that you can see in here is when I had the shortcuts, it's just put a little pipe symbol with the letter A, pipe symbol with the letter D. Now we may need to give a little bit extra guidelines on what that means. Hopefully it'll understand that D means done, but I think we do need to give it additional instructions. But as a short test, let's just hit save on this, and we better create a new chat. It won't affect the current chat, so we do need a new one, and we'll just type help and see what happens. Now I can do it with the colon. Actually, because we did mention /help, let's try that one instead. I'm here to maintain to-do lists. We've got help, set, add, done, list, to do, up and down. It's also put the /t. So I think we might just try and set it, and we'll just go add, and we'll say food, and we will put in apples, and we'll see what happens. Try A on its own this time, and we'll say food, and we'll say orange. Whilst that's happening, we'll type A, and the next one I do, I won't do the word food. Instead, I'll just say apple pie, and we'll see whether we get 3 items all on a food list. Now it's added it to the current list. So we've got a command up here called list, which will show our to-do list. We have one called to-do, which will show our to-do items. So we'll just try list and see what happens. That's great. To-do should, in this case, do the same thing. The list command didn't work the way I wanted, and this is going to make sense once we start looking at the response area of ChatGPT, in that I want to format the list of to-do lists different to the list of to-do items. I could test out more of the commands, but I do want to finish this off, and then we'll just run everything through it. When we were doing the request, and the request is processing of incoming prompts, I have 4 different sections. I have the role, it's a to-do app. I have an overview, you will maintain my lists. I have a bunch of commands that are all listed here. And lastly, I have guidelines. This could be in any order generally, but it reads like any document, and most documents have a structure from the top to the bottom. And I want the guidelines to happen after it understands what the overview of the command is and the list of the commands it's got available. Then any extra context that I want to add in, I'll put into the guidelines. All of this is for the request. Then we'll look at the response, but let's look at what we could do for some guidelines. Coming back to our custom instruction language here, we'll move over and have a look at the guidelines. And the first guideline we'll add is that it assigns numbers to each list item as we go by. Because really, I want to be able to, once I've got oranges added and then apples, if I want apples to be above oranges, I just want to say up to. I don't want to have to type in apples. So we've just told ChatGPT to assign each item a number and to be able to refer to that. And that also fits in well with these little command variables that were put in here called number. Earlier, we gave this little question mark here for a parameter to be optional. But what we haven't said is that when the name is optional, what does that mean? Like, where does it focus? So we can add another guideline, and what we'll do is we'll go with name question mark is optional. So we're just reinforcing that statement. If I don't give you a name, you should use the current list. The next thing that I would like to be able to support is the idea of day. We said earlier that there was this day variable, but what does that mean? If you see day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, put it into a day of week column. Now, one of the things that we haven't talked about is what columns are going to be on this to-do list. At the moment, we've given it a bit of an instruction that says there might be a day column, but we don't need to do that every time either. Now I'll just save this and we should have our guidelines up to date now. Let's take all this information that we've got for our request and we'll click on this button here. What we can do is head over to ChatGPT and come back to the custom instruction. We'll clear everything out that was here and paste in our new section, which is going to have the guidelines. And it might be time now to talk about what a response is. If you've written any prompts, you know that it takes your information, your request, and it converts it into some sort of document that it returns. Now, if you gave it, say, an email or an article, you could say, can you summarize it? But more importantly, you could say, can you put it into bullet points? And I don't want any bullet point to be more than, say, 10 characters long. Or you could give it a list of bullet points and say, can you give me a paragraph 30 words long per bullet point? And it knows how to do this. And this is the idea of the respond field. We've moved into this response area of the instruction, and there'll be similarities to the commands plus the normal guidelines. So what we'll do is we'll add in a responder called list. And we're basically saying display to-do list names and number of tasks in a table format. Now let's look at what we would do for the to-do items. That would be display to-do list items in table format with numbers and checkboxes. Now, something that you do can either be done or not done, and this is where the checkbox could be important. And I have a couple more statements here. The done, if we mark something as done, I may only give the first one or two letters from the word. So if we've got something like salsa and bachata, salsa starts with an SA, bachata starts with a BA. There's no ambiguity between them. So we should be able to just say done BA and hopefully the bachata gets removed. Also with the status, the idea of a status for me is really just tell me the current context that we're in, such as what is the current to-do list. Also, when I'm looking at help, I either want detailed help and I'll use the help command for that, but the status is more, here are just a list of command names that you can access. I'll add a last bit of freeform text to the response so that every time any command happens, whether it be the add or the to do, we get a status command. Now you could call the status command directly, but since it's a simple command that lists the name of the commands that are available and the current focus list in bold, I would like that to run every time I run any command. So what we'll do is we'll say show status after each command except for help. We don't need to do it for help because help is already a detailed help list with the current focus list being shown. So it's only for all other commands. And before we finish this off, I might also make an additional change to the guidelines here. What I haven't really talked about is the shape of the data. And in programming or databases, this is often called a schema. So what we'll do is add this section to the guidelines called schema. Now the word schema means a lot to database people, programmers, stuff like that, and it will mean something to ChatGPT. So I don't really need to describe what it means, but I do need to follow it up with the schema, and I'm basically saying that for the list item, I want to show the list name and the task count, so how many tasks are in that list. And for the to-do list, I want to show the task name, the day of week, because we did have support for days, and a completed task. And I think I need one more statement here in the guideline. I need to handle right at the very beginning when I haven't set a current focus list, but I'm adding one, that it goes, okay, if you're adding one and you don't currently have any lists, maybe we should set that. So we'll just paste this in. If list name is not provided for add done to do up or down, then act against the current focus list. You can set the current focus list if it is not set with the add command. So we'll hit save on this. And now we have a little bit more complete set of guidelines for incoming prompts. And we have how we would like to respond either for individual commands or for commands in general. What we'll do now is we'll come down to this response. We'll click on this. We'll head over to ChatGPT. We're in the custom instructions. Now I've made sure that this has been updated with the schema, and we'll head over to the response. We'll add in all this information. We can hit save and start a brand new chat again. We'll reduce this, and I think we can do a rapid fire run at this. So let's type in help with a slash at the beginning. Could be done with a colon as well, and we'll see what happens. Now this is looking pretty good. The role is I'm your to-do app responsible for maintaining to-do lists. We've got a list of commands that are all set up. It talks about how it works and that currently there is no current focus list set. Let's just see what happens if we add an item. So I'm going to add in dance, and we'll try bachata and press enter. It's about to add the next item. Now it's said default list, so it hasn't worked on the idea that it's bachata. I'd like to see what this does. So we'll do dance and we'll say salsa. And currently it still thinks we have a default list. So I'm just going to try the list command and see what we get here. Default, and it's called to. Now, one of the things we haven't done is given a rename list command, but that shouldn't matter. This should work. So I'm just going to say rename list default to dance, and we'll see whether this works. We'll try an L colon, and now we have a list called dance, and it has 2 items in it. Now to go to our grocery or our food list, I think we'll use the set command this time. So we'll say set food. If we do an L colon, we probably get 2 list items, one with 0 entries, which is what we got. So I think we'll add some food, and we'll say add food. We'll say apple, like that, and we'll start writing the next one, food. We'll say orange. Now we shouldn't need to add in food each time, so let's try add, and we'll say steak, and we'll do a list. We can use the alias we in the past, but we'll use the full command name now. We'll say list, and we have 3 food items, and we have 2 dance items. Now currently the focus list is food. If we do the to-do command, it should give us the 3 items out of the food list. So let's just type to do. 3 items are coming down. None of them are completed. So maybe we can do that. So we'll say done to. Remember that we had support for numbers. We do not have to say the whole word. We'll say to do, and it's done. It's not on the list anymore. Now we haven't built in any commands to show stuff that are done. We could do that. It may also just work if we wrote the right sort of prompt. But so far this is working the way that I've instructed it in the custom instruction. Now, one of the things I noticed is it's not giving us a list of the command names in bold, so there could be a little bit of tweaking that I need to do to the custom instruction. We might just try the status command and see whether that gives us extra information. It's not telling us the list of commands available. We could do that via help, of course. So this is where we can see the commands available. It states here that show command names in the current list name. So it should have happened. When I've tested this in the past, it does. But this just means that the custom instruction needs a little bit more tweaking. Let's try another thing. We're currently on the food list. I'm going to do the dance list again. And tonight it's a Sunday afternoon and I'm about to go and do Zouk. So what we'll do is we'll say add to dance. We'll say Zouk, and it's a Sunday, so we'll just say on sun, and we'll see what happens. It said add Zouk to dance list for Sunday, and it's also changed the list. So now when we do a to do, I'm just gonna try a command that I haven't written. So we'll say change list, we'll call it dance, and then we'll type in to do. And it's Got it right. So sometimes, like all ChatGPT stuff, it doesn't do exactly what you've asked it to do. But a little bit of tweaking, we gave it a change focus of list. It worked. When it returned the information, it added it to the day of week. Since this item is actually meant to be done now, I might just use the up command, and in the past we used a number. Let's see what happens if I do ZO. It says it's moved it up the list. Generally, this is working the way we need. We've used custom instructions in ChatGPT to manage our to-do lists using a command structure. And I think the important takeaway is that you can recreate these command structures for any sort of actor or agent that you're trying to create within ChatGPT. If you want to see more videos on custom instructions in GPT, check out one of the videos over here. My name's David and this has been an Appycast.